this is weird, but we are now in a city, and it's really just different for us. We've never been in a city, and extra credit if you can guess what city this is behind me. But it has me really reflecting on the last year in the South Pacific and just really how special all that was in our first season, to be so off the map and to see so many different cultures and experiences that are so unique to us. Like many of you, over the last year with COVID, we've all been secluded and confined to something that maybe looks a little bit more like the scene behind me. So I'm just in a moment of reflection and appreciation for our first season. And with that, I wanted to share some of our best moments and best anchorages that we were in the South Pacific in season 1. And so this is the first time we've done a video like this. It's our top 10 anchorages of the South Pacific. And it's also, I'm going to include our 2 least favorite anchorages of the South Pacific as well, just to like mix it up. So let's start it off with our top 10 favorite anchorages. Number 10 is Niue. Niue is actually a part of New Zealand. It's just like a little island out in the middle of nowhere. So don't expect it to feel anything like the land of Kiwis that you would expect to feel like New Zealand. It's most well known for really deep water, crystal clear water, and above ground caves and an underground cave system. So exploring the underwater cave system of Niue in search of their endemic sea snakes was probably like the very definition of adventure for me. Also, if you happen to be there for whale season, because of the crystal clear water, you're going to get some of the best whale footage you will ever get. And just like Tonga, you are actually able to get into the water with the whales if you get a permit. Something else that I found to be incredibly unique about Niue was the way that you actually get your dinghy out of the water. Because the island falls off so dramatically, you actually take your dinghy next to the dock and they have a crane, and you lift your dinghy all the way up with the crane, and then you place it on land, and then you cart it away, which was pretty fun in and of itself. Because the water in Niue is so deep, you actually cannot anchor there. Right off the island, the water is 30 meters or 90 feet, so you can't drop anchor in that, and you wouldn't want to anyway because the coral is amazing right underneath the boat. So you have to grab one of their handful of public moorings that they have there for you. So if you were to fly to Niue, the only way to get there is actually to fly through New Zealand. So you have to go to Auckland and then off to Niue. So it's actually very remote, really out there. A lot of people haven't heard of it, but it's got a beautiful people, beautiful culture, and lush vegetation, and I highly recommend you check that place out and add that onto your list. Number 9 is Namotu Island, which is in Fiji. It is on the west side, and it's actually right next to a world famous surf spot called Cloudbreak. So Cloudbreak is famous for a reason. When the surf's up, it's huge, and so surfers from all around the world come to compete at Cloudbreak. It's a little bit too big for me and my crew, so we actually just hung out like the little putty wave right next door, which was absolutely beautiful as well. And we spent a week there just editing. We made a tent over Sylphia to like keep the sun off of us, and we just edited our little brains out and then went surfing every day. And that's not even mentioning how crystal clear the water is. I'm not much of a snorkeler, you know I love diving, but the water there was just crystal clear and little fish everywhere. And there's also a really sneaky secret shark dive right off in between the channel there. So it's a really fun spot. Number 8 is Wallace and Petuna. Wallace and Petuna is actually a French island, French country, right in between Samoa and Fiji. And I don't think a lot of people have heard of it. And because of that, they don't get a lot of visitors. Apparently only 3 boats a year show up at Wallace and Petuna. So when we arrived, they were quite excited to see us. So much so that we actually landed on French TV there, which was pretty cool. They even aired it in Paris from what we were told. And for us, being off the map for so long, it was really nice to come into a place that had a little bit of civilization, a lot of the things that we missed on our travels, such as wine and cheese and all those nice French things. And we went on a mission to find chocolate croissants, or what they call pain chocolat. And the water there was just amazing. The entire island is surrounded by a barrier reef, if you will. So you actually park your boat in a little lagoon right there in front of the town. It's just beautiful. So if you haven't heard of Wallace and Petuna, look that one up. It's just a little dot out there, and hopefully you can check that place out on your travels one day. Number 8 is Manta Point. Manta Point is in Fiji on the west end, and it is famous, as you would guess, for manta rays. And it is so famous that unlike some of these other anchorages, you are not going to get this one all to yourself. This is definitely on the hard beaten track of sailing now. But it should not be overlooked. It's famous for a reason. And if you time it right, right in between the islands, the current starts ripping at different times of the day with the tide. And during those times, manta rays come to feed, and because all the plankton starts going through there. So they're just in there feeding, and you can go snorkeling with them. But just like any time you're with manta rays, just give them a little bit of space. Don't hover right above them so that they can move around. And just an absolutely beautiful anchorage as well, which is also nearby 2 little shipwrecks. Some little fishing trawlers were put down there, and there's some really fun little hiking trails and beautiful sunsets there as well. So yeah, it's not to be overlooked, and just because there's crowds, don't let that get you down. Just head there anyway and enjoy it. Number 6 is Luizad Archipelago in Papua New Guinea. This place was actually an unexpected stop for us. We ended up coming through there as COVID was breaking out. So unfortunately, we were only able to spend 2 days there. And ever since we left, I've been just wondering and pondering, how am I going to get back there? Why? Is because the water is so crystal clear. We were looking down on 20 meters, and you could just see the shadow of the boat underneath, and you could just see all the little fish even from the surface. In fact, I've never seen so many millions of microscopic little fish, so much so that as you were diving through them, you couldn't even see the reef. All you could see is these clouds of fish moving. Just absolutely beautiful. And the people there were great. We encountered sailaus, which is a type of little outrigger canoe that these guys build, and they use tarps and stuff to use as sails. And for me, people always definitely make an experience, and the people in the Luizads were just a treat. And we definitely were the only boat that we saw other than the local sailaus, so we definitely felt like we were had the whole place to ourselves. So Luizads, you should definitely check that one out on the map, and probably a hard one to get to, but if you can, I highly recommend it, and I plan on going back one day myself. Number 5 is Ridery Bay in Solomon Islands, otherwise known as John Ruka's village, and also the site of the shipwreck, the World Discoverer, which is a shipwreck cruise ship that got pushed up on shore many, many years ago. Why this one was so special is it was just a central hub of all of the best wrecks in Solomons, which is, of course, there's so many World War II wrecks around the corner in Tulagi, our favorite little fishing trawler, which was just a city of little macro things for us to film, and it was my first time seeing a mantis shrimp, so that right there added a high on the list. But for sure, the reason why this one's so high on the list is John Ruka himself. John Ruka is actually well known in the sailing community in Solomon Islands for just being such a warm, inviting soul. We enjoyed John's company so much that we actually invited him on to be a crew member for a month, which was really a special experience for us to have somebody that's a chief of a village traveling around with us, which opened so many doors in the Solomons for us, because obviously everybody knew John. And yeah, he became a really good friend, and I miss him, and I really hope to be able to see him again. So if you ever make your way to Solomons, put Ridery Bay at the very top of the list, because that was our first stop, and it completely changed our perception of what Solomons was going to be like. Number 4 is Tetepari, which is in Solomon Islands as well. We didn't know much about Tetepari other than it is, the entire thing is a nature preserve and a marine preserve, and it is the largest uninhabited island of the Solomon Islands. But what we were greeted with when we got in the water there was some of the biggest unafraid fish that we'd ever seen, of course, because they knew that they were safe there. And we just happened to stumble into the place on the day that the local rangers told us, hey, guess what? The green sea turtle eggs are now hatching, and we're going to be releasing them today into the ocean, which for the entire crew was like such a high event to get on our bucket list. So when that happened, yeah, I mean I still talk about that like probably on a weekly basis just because it was so amazing. And the sunsets were just gorgeous, and we went on a couple hikes there through the forest, and you could just tell that by it being so preserved that it was just a healthy population above and underwater. Tetepari is a very special place, and yeah, I hope everybody can see it one day. Number 3 is David's Village in the Kingdom of Tonga. Now David's Village, I'm not even going to try to name that island because I'm just going to massacre it. It's just a really hard name. But it is in a beautiful area, and legend has it that it is the birthplace of kava. If you don't know what kava is, it's a culturally significant drink to a lot of Polynesian people. It's a root. They mash it up and it has an intoxicating attributes to it. David was so inviting. We joined him for a feast that he put on, him and his family that just live on the island all by themselves. And he was so nice that he even invited us to church, which we gladly accepted his invitation. And I'm so glad that we did, because we really saw just how important that is to the people of Tonga. And don't step foot on the islands on Sunday, because it's just not appropriate. And of course, Tonga is also really well known for whales. Humpback whales conglomerate there to give birth and to mate, and we happen to be there right in the middle of whale season, and we just had some of the most magical, beautiful experience with humpback whales in my entire life. And if that alone doesn't make you want to go to the Kingdom of Tonga, I don't know what else will. But I should also point out that some of the best cave diving we saw in the South Pacific was right around the corner at a very famous site called Swallow's Cave, which was filled with these little fish that were just dancing in the rays of light, which was a beautiful scene. So, go there. Number 2 is Port Resolution on Tanna Island, Vanuatu. What a beautiful place. Right when we sailed into Port Resolution, the first things we saw were people on canoes that were out fishing, and everybody's living in grass huts. It was the first time in the South Pacific that it was like we've arrived to the picture perfect thought of what you think the South Pacific would look like. And if that wasn't enough, a very active volcano is the backdrop to this as well. And that volcano was so powerful. We were there for some little eruptions, and it just made you feel so small and insignificant, honestly, which was just an amazing experience to see. The culture of Vanuatu and Tanna Island especially is still so vibrant, so colorful, filled with song and dance to keep their culture alive, and we really enjoyed our time there. And right there at Port Resolution, just the diving just around every corner seemed to be another good anchorage, and of course just another good dive. It wasn't until Vanuatu that we really started to slow down and start enjoying diving just a little bit more. And if you don't know, that's where we actually picked up everybody's favorite crew member, which was Peanut. So of course, Tanna just holds a little dear spot in our heart. So that's Tanna. And before I tell you our favorite anchorage in all of the South Pacific, I'm actually going to tell you our least favorite too, just to kind of shake it up. So let's start with Nerea Island, which is in Solomon Islands. Nerea Island is just a gorgeous spot. You feel like you've just entered into Jurassic Park, but super dangerous anchorage. It's not an anchorage. We took a mooring ball that was part of a local liveaboard that said that we could do that, and when we got there it was on the leeward side, so the wind was coming from the other side, and we as a crew said, oh, okay, this is okay. We got the mooring ball, we tied up our stern on shore, and we all said this is going to be fine as long as the wind doesn't change. Well, of course the wind changed. In the middle of the night the wind came around, and the wind prediction was wrong, and so we had wind upwards of like 20 knots in the middle of the night, and our stern was just mere meters from shore on jagged rocks. Nobody slept. We were up all night, just stressed as could be, and the moment the daylight came, we cast off those lines and we took off. because it was just so uncomfortable. So it's not that Nerea Island wasn't beautiful, it's not that the diving there wasn't beautiful, because all of which it just was a very dangerous anchorage. So I'm gonna add that one to my least favorite anchorage for personal reasons. So my least favorite anchorage in all of the South Pacific, unfortunately, is Apia, Samoa. I want to make it clear that it has nothing to do with the country itself or the beauty of it or even the people, because all three are just some of the most beautiful that we did encounter. What it actually is the bureaucracy of the checking in, checking out policies and the bureaucracy of that. So a lot of countries, including Fiji and Tonga, you have to get what's known as a cruising permit. It means you can move around the country, move around to different islands, and then they have different check-out spots. So when it's time to leave the country, you check out and then you head on your way. Unfortunately, Samoa doesn't have any of that. They only have one check-in spot, and that's in Apia. And you're forced to come into a harbor that is at the base of the city, and you have to sit right there. And it costs $100 just to anchor there. And if you want to leave that harbor, you have to get a cruising permit. Well, that's fine, but they only give you a 5 to 7 day cruising permit. And then you can leave the harbor, but you must come back to check out. Now it's 2 sets of islands, so if you want to go to the western island and see those beautiful things on that island, you have to go there and then return to Apia. Now Samoa is located right in the middle where the trade winds are always blowing from east to west. So if you were to go to the western island and you want to come back, you have to push back against likely 20-25 knots in your face to get to Apia. And when I tried to explain this, like, hey, let us leave from that island and let us check out now and leave, the response was, hey, well, the ferry comes back every day. Well, it just to me seems that they don't understand sailing and the fact that we don't have a ferry engine, that it's really hard for us to get back there to check out. So with that said, we actually didn't go to any other anchorages in all of Samoa because we couldn't. So we only hung out in Apia for 8 days and then we left the country, unfortunately. So you should still go to Samoa, but you should just fly there until they change these bureaucracy laws when it comes to sailing. And if they ever do, I will return there by boat, and can't wait to see all the cool anchorages that I missed out on. And what we've decided is our most favorite anchorage in all of the South Pacific is Neotapatapu in the Kingdom of Tonga. This little island is the very north island of all of the Kingdom of Tonga, so it's very remote and not a lot of people make it up there. But because of that, the people are stoked to see you. And even the whales there look like they don't see people that often. They came right up to us, they were breaching in front of us. It was just a spectacular show that they put on for us. And if that wasn't enough, the anchorage is right there in this beautiful little bay. Kind of hard to get into, but we put the drone in the air so we could make it through the crack. But once you get in there, there's even like this little remote island that looks like something out of Castaway, just filled with palm trees. And we had manta rays swimming around the boat the whole time. And the backdrop of Neotapatapu is another volcano that we took our big dinghy over, and that little island only had one family living on it, and all the sons' names were Stanley. And they took us on a tour to the top of their volcano, which they were more than happy to do. They certainly don't get any visitors over there. We put on the red clay on our face to prove that we had made it to the top of the volcano. And we were only there, I think, for 4 days, but it just left such an impact in my heart of like just what I had envisioned the South Pacific to be, that I would look back on Neotapatapu and I just smile. So definitely, if you haven't heard of that one, go there first, stay there, and definitely go there during whale season because that's obviously the highlight. So I hope that gives you guys some inspiration for your future travels. This is a really fun episode for me to put together because it really just takes me back down memory lane and just remembering just how special all of these places were. And so yeah, I just feel very lucky to have experienced all that, and I hope that you guys all have the same experience one day in your lives as well. So thank you guys so much for watching, and next week we're going to do our top 10 dives of the South Pacific, which is definitely different than anchor spots. It's just magical dive spots. lot of these places are only accessible by boat, but many of them you can get near by other means of travel as well. I understand that not everybody has the ability to just pull anchor and just go all over the world in a little floating home. But if you do have the opportunity, I can't recommend it highly enough to give sailing a try and to see if it's for you if you haven't already. And if not, just find your other means of travel that hopefully you can visit some of these destinations as well.